Hey guys, welcome to Redneck Off the Range, and boy do I have a fishing story for you today. So, if you're new to the channel, I set out 2023 with a few goals in mind when it comes to fishing. One was I wanted to catch at least 5 new species of fish, which shouldn't have been hard because I haven't really caught all that many different species of fish in my lifetime, and I very quickly got to 5, and then I wanted to just see how many species of fish, new species of fish, that I could catch throughout the course of the year. Another goal that I set myself was to just go out and try new things, try new techniques, try new lakes and rivers and creeks, and just see how successful I could be. And I've actually been pretty successful throughout the course of the year, and this story is no exception, but it starts out a little rocky. And so I will say that at one point I catch another new species, making 9 new species for the year, and at another point I catch the biggest fish that I have ever caught. So let's begin. So about 2-ish weeks ago I was out in Illinois at my fiance's house, and there's a lake out there which I caught quite a few yellow bullheads, and I caught 1 common carp earlier in the year, and I decided that that was a pretty good fishing spot for both catfish and carp, even though I haven't caught any channel cats or blue cats, but it was definitely a good place to catch yellow bullheads, and I'm sure there's plenty of channel cats in there as well, just haven't found them yet. But anyway, I went to this lake in the same spot that I always fish, and I had 1 rod that I had set up for carp with a method feeder and a hair rig, which I hadn't had any luck with at that point in time, but I just was trying it out, trying the hair rig out for the first time, to see if that gave me any advantage over just having a straight hook with corn on the hook itself. So I had that rod, and I had another rod that I just had a night crawler on, and I was using that for bullheads or just anything that wanted to bite. And then while I was waiting for that, I had my ultralight, and I was just kind of tossing that around with some worms and some different lures just to see what I could get. And it was actually a fairly slow day of fishing. I only caught a couple of green sunfish and a hybrid bluegill with the ultralight, and then I hadn't really gotten any bites on either of my other rods, and eventually I just got tired of it, and I decided just switch it up. So I took out the rod that I had for catfish, and I took the night crawler off, and I tried a chicken liver, because chicken livers are actually a pretty good catfish bait. And I threw that out there, and within a minute, maybe 2 minutes, I had a pretty decent bite on the end of my catfish rod. So I reeled it in, and it was a pretty decent sized yellow bullhead. I'd say at least 1 foot long, which is pretty good size for a bullhead. And so I reel it in, and I see that it swallowed the hook. And swallowing a fish that small, swallowing a circle hook, it's not exactly the best thing in the world. In fact, if you're going to try and get the hook out, you're pretty much going to kill the fish. And I pretty much knew that was going to happen, but I got the hook out, and I knew the fish was going to die probably in the next 20 minutes or so. But I still wanted to get a picture of the fish, because I get a picture of all the fish that I catch just to document them, and I don't know, I just like looking at the fish, and I like showing them off. So I had it in my left hand, and I was trying to take a picture of it, and it just kept squirming around, and so I kind of changed its position in my hand, which was really, really stupid, trying to get a picture of it, and it flopped really hard, and one of its spines actually went about a 1/2 inch into the meat of my hand, and it stuck. I couldn't get it out. I couldn't just pull it out. It was in there really good, almost like it was barbed. And so I was kind of panicking for a minute, just because I didn't know how I was going to get this thing out of my hand, because you pull on it and just wanted to like rip my hand apart. Like it wouldn't let go of the meat inside my hand. So I eventually came to the conclusion that the catfish was going to die anyway, so I took my pliers and I cut the spine off the catfish, threw the catfish back in the water. So I didn't get a picture of that particular bullhead, just because I didn't want to take a picture of my bloody hand with it in my hand. So I didn't get a picture of that one, unfortunately. Then I take my pliers and I had to pull it really hard to get the spine out of my hand, and it was bleeding really bad and it was really swollen. Really nasty and really painful, actually. And so I trying to wash it off, and I called my fiance, tell her what happened. She just said, come back, we'll get some peroxide on and all that. And so I clean it up best I can with what I have, which is basically water. And I start packing up, and all of a sudden I hear all this line coming out of my other rod, which I totally forgot about at this point because I wasn't even thinking about it. But I look over, and my rod, which is in a rod holder sticking pretty much straight up, is more horizontal. And I mean, it is just taking 20, 30 yards of line out. So there's a big fish on the end of this line. And I pick it up and I start reeling it in, and it's quite obvious that I'm outgunned, because this really wasn't a carp rod. This is just kind of your standard medium power 6.5 foot fishing rod, which is good for catching small, well, not small, but decent sized bass and channel cats and stuff like that. But I was definitely outgunned, and so I spend a couple minutes trying to reel in this fish, and eventually it snaps off. Very, very disappointed, but I wanted some redemption because I felt so cheated from this fishing trip. It's like I didn't get a picture of the bullhead. I got spined in the hand, and I actually had to go to the doctor and make sure I didn't have any infections. I lost this massive fish that I don't even know what it was. I mean, it could have been a common carp, a grass carp. It could have been a buffalo of some sort. So I just felt so cheated. Anyway, fast forward about a week. This past week, I actually took off all week to do some fishing. I hadn't had a vacation in quite a while, so I took the holiday, Labor Day. I was already off for that day, so I took the next 4 days off and decided to do a little fishing on those 4 days, plus the weekend after. And so, it started off, I really wasn't catching anything. I actually got skunked one day, which was very disappointing. And I really was only catching like bluegill and green sunfish, things like that, just with little red worms. It's like nothing wanted to bite the bigger catfish baits, nothing wanted to bite the lure, and the couple fish that did bite the lure got off after a few seconds. And so I felt so cheated, and I felt really disappointed several days because it's like I either caught nothing or I only caught little fish. And not that I don't enjoy catching little fish, because I actually caught like 30 of them in one day, and it's like that's a lot of fish, but they're all like little tiny fish, and I couldn't get anything sizable. So anyway, in the first 3 days I just kind of felt cheated, and like I couldn't get anything decent. So I eventually on Friday, I went to a lake really close to where I work that I hadn't really caught anything other than sunfish. I did catch one gar in the creek next to the lake, but other than that, it's like all I caught at this lake was sunfish, bluegill, long ear, green sunfish, things like that. So anyway, I knew there were a lot of different species in this lake, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to take 2 rods and I'm going to try some carp fishing. So I had 2 different rods, and I had set up for, with my carp rigs, and they were actually decent sized rods, with, one had 20-pound line, one had 14, so, should be plenty powerful enough to, or strong enough rather, to pull in a nice big carp. And while I have those 2 rods out, I just was playing around with my ultralight, catching all kinds of little bluegill. And I eventually get one really good bite on one of my rods. And so I start to reel it in, and I get it, I get the fish up to the surface, and I can see it's a big fish. I don't know exactly what type of fish it was. It could have been a common carp. It could have been buffalo of some sort. But you know, I got it about halfway to the bank, and then it took off, and the line snapped right out of the reel. It was a closed-faced spin cast reel. Really wasn't the most ideal setup. I mean, you can definitely catch carp with a spin cast reel, but this particular one was like the cheapest reel I've ever felt, and as soon as I started reeling it in, I was like, this was a bad idea. And it was, because the drag didn't want to work, and it's like you have this big fish, which is probably like, you know, 15 to 20 pounds, and it takes off with this 14-pound line, and the drag doesn't work, and so it just pulls the line right out. So I felt cheated, like I couldn't catch this fish. But you know, I go and I re-rig this line, or this rod, and I get a bite on the other rod. And this one I do actually get in, so I'm reeling it in, and it's definitely like half the size of the one that I lost. But anyway, I finally get it in, and it's actually a new species for me. It is a smallmouth buffalo. And you know, there's also another species around here. It's called a black buffalo. It looks really similar to a smallmouth, and I've actually tried to do a little research, and I determined that it's really, really hard to tell the difference between a true smallmouth and a true black buffalo, because there's a lot of hybridization, and I watched this video from KN Fishing Smarts, and he actually said that to tell if it's a black buffalo, I mean, sometimes it is just not obvious, and even with the DNA test, it's not 100% accurate. And so we're just going to say that it's a smallmouth buffalo. And because I actually caught two more of these buffalo, and some of them, you know, a couple of them kind of look like they could be black buffalo, or they could be hybrids, just because of the way their hump, the way their back is arched and humped. You know, smallmouth are supposed to have like a really dramatic hump, but not all of them. You know, they could be a little less dramatic, and the black buffalo is supposed to be more straight, torpedo-like. And it's just kind of hard to tell. You know, it could be a hybrid, could be a smallmouth, or it could be a black buffalo. But I'm just gonna say that they're all smallmouth buffalo. So anyway, I caught three. They were pretty good size, anywhere between, like, I'd say 18 inches to 2 feet long. So that's pretty good sized fish, and definitely a new species for me. So that's species number 9. Now, along with the 3 that I caught, I also lost 3. So I broke off one more time with my cheap rod, and then another time, I think it was with the same rod, it actually just came off. But anyway, I could have landed 6, and well, definitely I could have landed 5 if I had a better rod. You know, one of them could have been a common carp or a grass carp or whatever. I just don't know. But anyway, 3 smallmouth buffalo. It was definitely a good day of fishing. It was about 4 hours. So anyway, that's species number 9. So if anybody's keeping track, that is a rainbow trout, white crappie, yellow bullhead, black bullhead, common carp, golden shiner, red ear sunfish, short-nosed gar, and now a smallmouth buffalo. So that's 9 new species of fish in the course of, well, less than a year, and you know, in the span of this year so far. So that's very, very exciting. But the story is not done, because that was Friday. I went from fishing there, you know, from 4 hours fishing there, went to my fiance's house. Didn't really do any fishing on Saturday, but Sunday I went back out to the lake that I lost that really big fish 2 weeks before, and I wanted to try a little redemption, and I took my carp rod that I caught those 3 buffalo on, and then I took a different rod to try for some bullheads, and I just sat there. I was there for about 4 hours, and it was actually a really slow day of fishing, not a whole lot of bites. But then, after about 2 hours, the carp rod bent over and started pulling out drag, and so I pick it up and I start reeling it in, and it was probably about a 5 to 10 minute fight. I mean, that doesn't sound like much to some people who are going after these monster fish and they spend like a half hour fighting, but for me, and I don't, the biggest fish I ever caught was probably like, I don't know, 5 pounds before this. The biggest fish I truly caught and weighed and everything. So this was a true monster for me. Anyway, I finally get it up to the surface, and I can tell it is a giant common carp, and I can tell that I need a bigger net. So I spent about 5 to 10 minutes reeling it in, and I finally get it close enough to where I can net it, and I can only get about halfway in the net because that's how small my net is compared to the fish. Fish was about 30 inches long, maybe between 30 inches and 3 feet, which is 36 inches. But this is a massive, massive fish for the biggest fish that I have ever caught. And so I tried my best to weigh it in the net, and I couldn't really get an accurate reading, but the best I could tell, it was around 17.5 pounds. Could have been more if I had the proper equipment to actually weigh a fish of this size. But either way, let's just say it's 17.5 pounds. That is the biggest fish I have ever landed, and I didn't have a tape measure, but it was about 3 of my feet, which my feet, my shoes anyway, are about 11 inches long. So roughly 33 inches long, but I'd say anywhere between 30 and 36, just a rough estimate. But either way, that is a massive common carp, and common carp get twice that size, and so I definitely want to go back. I heard some guy say that the carp, or the fish anyway, get really, really active right around sunset in that lake, and I didn't really have time to stay until sunset. I only had a few hours that I could fish, but in those 4 hours I caught that giant common carp, and then I also caught a little yellow bullhead that I didn't get spined by, so that was a plus. So the two types of fish that I catch out of that lake mainly are yellow bullheads and common carp, and that was the biggest common carp. Now, I have caught a grass carp in the past, but it kind of doesn't count because as soon as I got it on the bank, it broke off and went back in the water, so I didn't really have a chance to actually weigh it or measure it or anything. I didn't even really touch it, but I still count it because I got it all the way to the bank without it breaking off, and then when I finally got it on the bank is when it broke off. So, but either way, even if the common carp wasn't the biggest fish I ever caught, I would say it's the biggest fish that I would ever weighed. And so, anyway, that was just a really, really exciting fishing trip for me. And so, new species number 9, smallmouth buffalo, biggest fish I ever caught, and obviously a new personal best, common carp at 17 pounds 8 ounces, and probably about the longest fish I ever caught, being close to 3 feet long. So definitely an exciting time. Now, there's really only like a month or so left that I can get some really good fishing in, so I plan on going back to that lake around sunset, go after work one day and do a little fishing there for about 2 hours. So that's probably about all the time I'll have, and see what I can catch. Maybe I can catch another big common carp, maybe I can catch a buffalo, maybe I can finally catch a channel cat, or just something else. Because I know there's all kinds of fish in that lake, including like sauger and largemouth bass and white crappie, things like that, and obviously all the things that I've already caught. So anyway, that's all I really have to say about that. I do plan on getting a GoPro camera at some point this year, probably closer to Christmas time. So next year I can actually do some fishing adventure videos. I used to try to do videos while I was fishing, but I dropped the camera, and I'm just so afraid I'm going to drop the camera again and do some serious damage to it. So I want to get a GoPro that I could mount to my chest or something, that I could get some really good fishing footage, and then maybe a smaller, cheaper camera that I'm not afraid to damage as much, and try to do, get some footage on a tripod as well. So that's all kind of next year's plan. I would take this camera out and do fishing adventures, but I already dropped it once, I already broke it once, and it's still technically broken. It's usable, but it's broken. And I really don't want to break it all the way, because if I break it all the way, then I'm done making videos until I get a whole new camera. And I'm not a wealthy man. I can't just go out and buy a $1,000 camera. So anyway, that's all for this video. So subscribe to my channel. Until next time, be safe.